All this action that you hear, there's a rhythm. God saw, God said, and then we get to this. Now remember I said that when there's a change in the pattern, that's a note to pay attention. Something very special is happening. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, the cattle according to its kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Now here's the break in the pattern. Then, God said, let us make man, humanity here, in our image and likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over cattle, and over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. What's unique about this and so far what we've seen? What are some of the unique things here?
Man is not called into existence.
Man is not called into existence.
Right. He's made.
But there's something happens here.
Hierarchy?
There is a hierarchy, but I'm talking about specifically with this verse.
None of the creatures created were made in His image.
None of the creatures were made in His image and likeness. And we're going to unpack those two words. But that's true. But let's look at something else. What does God do here that He didn't do?
He consulted the other God.
The God community gathers together.
At a conference.
There is
They
a
had a GC General Conference.
There is a community meeting here of God. Let us make man in our image, and humanity in our image and
And
likeness.
he got lowered too.
But, so God here gathers to make a decision about what?
The creation of humanity.
Man.
More than just the creation of, what about that creation?
How to create them.
How to create them,
Rulership.
And what
their
authority?
rulership, who they were going to be, what their identity was going to be. Remember identity giver? And so, we start to see that here, the shift in even the verbal patterns, God gathers together and He makes a decision on what humans will be like. A specific decision. And now, I want you to see value here for a second and think. God can make humans out of anything in the universe. He searches the universe and He says, let us make humans in our image, in our likeness. So, how much higher a position could God have for humanity? In fact, the Godhead gathered together to decide to extend their community to humanity. The God community gathered together and decided to extend their community to humanity. Further, when it says, let us make them in our image and likeness, the word image there, the word image has some interesting translations. One of them is this: a representative part of something. The image of something is a representative part of something, which means if you see that, you see a representation of that other thing. If we have God's image and likeness upon us, it means that we are to be like Him. We were created to be like Him. Kelohim, like God. We were created to be like God. But further, to be in His image means we were to be a representation of Him to who?
The rest of the earth.
To the rest of the world. What do you mean?
I mean, well, the rest of
All of creation. So, this is a beautiful picture. So animals would know what God was like through our hands.
But we eat them. How can?
Well, wait. This is when stuff was running the way it was supposed to, and it was.
That's Genesis 3.
This was about life, right? So humans, when they were created and given God's identity, when humans were created and given God's
That's my dude
identity,
over there.
they were also given dominion.
Yeah.
Now, dominion is a co-rulership with God in a trust relationship with God. Because we would do as God does. We would rule as God rules. In the image of God's rulership, we would rule. So how would we have to see life if we were ruling in God's image?
Valuable. Valuable.
As good, and we would do whatever it was to serve life because that's what's important. So in our rulership, in our dominion, dominion means to be life-giving and serving. That's the kind of rulership we're meant to have. To take care of, to nurture, to give life to. Right? As God does. We see God. Life, 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 life. Love, 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 right? That's what it says about Him. So, when humans were given this dominion and to rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, that was not domination. Do not read that word domination. It's dominion. It's a rulership, but the only true rulership that we were meant to have was that dominion in the image of God. So that when the creatures saw us, they would have a touch of God in their lives.
That's all before sin, right?
That's, oh, hold on. You're right, but there's a reason. You see, something happened that distorted the picture of God. And we'll get there. But we really need to work our way through, because Genesis 1 and 2 is crucial to maintain the picture of God when you go up through and cross the bar line to Genesis 3. Because the picture here in 1 and 2 is a kind of the pure picture of God. And so if you want to know what God is like, know God of Genesis 1 and 2. And in 1, we've seen this God who is about life, who is about love, who is about planning. And it's all about giving life, expanding life, sharing. So God said, let us create them, let them have dominion over all the earth. So, what does dominion show? Why dominion?
Responsibility.
Responsibility, but in what sense?
In a godly sense?
In a godly sense, which is the way that we treat and care for creation. If we do it, and if we are doing it in the image of God, then life would be sustained. Life would be moved on and furthered and nurtured. And so, in serving and doing what we were created to do, we are life givers too. We participate in it, and we kind of oversee and take care of. Now imagine the value that God has for humanity. Not only did He make us in His image and likeness, which there is no price for that, but He placed everything He created in our hands. Now imagine the statement of value that God has for humans to do that. You take everything you've ever done and you place it in the hands of your kid. What does that show? Trust. Value that you hold for them. So, the trust factor is incredibly important. In fact, I would say to you that we are created for trust relationships. And we're going to see more of that in chapter 2. So, but it says God created man, that is humanity, in the image of God. He created him. Male and female, He created them. And there's an important thing here. He created, to be in God's image, what is one of the things we have to have? What kind of relation? Both male and female to be in the image of God, because even God The community of God came together to make a decision because they were extending the God community to humanity. But further, in order to be in the image of God, we must be community as well. It has nothing to do with anatomical parts. It has to do with the very way that we are created and the things that we bring that are parts of the bearing the image of God. Nurturing, caring for, valuing. In fact, if we do anything, we learn we are to be valuers. We are treasurers, just like God is. God is a treasurer of creation. That means He sees creation as His treasure. He sees creation as His priceless gem. And so if we are to have God's view, to be in God's image, we will see creation as a treasure, as a gem. And then, and there's much more in that, but then He says He blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. And again, we see God spreading life. Right? Go fill the earth. Now, who was over who? Who was to rule over who here? Man or woman? It's a trap. I've got a trap
Yeah,
set
that's
for
why,
you.
that's why I answered.
There weren't to rule over each other. And if rulership, it was serving. If there was to be rulership, it would be to serve the other one, to bring life to the other one. This is pre-fall view. And further, if God values everything that He was about in creation was about life, right? That we can see. All about life. All about sustaining and creating and giving everything apart. All the creatures apart in life-giving. Which bears the imprint of God. Because God is life-giver. So, and we go on, and then He gives all the herbs of the field and fruit trees for food. And then we move to where God makes a statement. Then God saw that everything that He had made, and it was
Very
Tov Ma'od, very good. So, a completed creation in God's eyes is a beautiful thing. It's something that gives Him pleasure and joy. Why did God even bother creating? Ultimately, it's because He wanted to, because it's out of who He is. He is life-giver. So, and then it said, indeed, everything was very good. Evening and morning were the sixth day. So we come to the end of the first creation day. I'm sorry, the creation. And at the end of it, we have another break. Something different happens.
Too important.